Good afternoon, hello, welcome to episode 4 of Talk It Out, the show where we talk about all things bike racing, triathlon and anything we can get our hands on really. This show is put on by UK Bike Fit, so thanks to Dan and the team at UK Bike Fit for enabling this. I'm Daniel, you might know me from the YouTube channel Triathlon Dan, but you might not. This is Adam Kenway. Good afternoon, Adam.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining me.
No, thank you for inviting me.
Adam, if people are watching this and they're in the British road racing scene, they're probably going to know who you are. But before we go on to today's episode, would you just introduce yourself and tell me why you've got the right to talk about British road racing?
So I've been racing now for probably 10, 12 years on the domestic side, all the way from club cyclist all the way up to, I don't know, Continental, Tour of Yorkshire, you know what I mean, national champs, that kind of thing. So I've kind of done everything domestic and a little bit international, but not that much international.
We've all done stuff.
Yeah.
Right, so we're going to start by Adam talking a bit about road racing and crit racing. A bit about what's local to us, but also like nationally what else is going off, because I think we have quite a good road and crit racing scene around here, but I've only really been in it for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So could you perhaps give us an insight into when you started road and crit racing, what was the scene like? Did you have local races? Were they closed circuit? Were they open road? You know, what was available to you?
So when I first started, or when I came back in cycling when I was 24, I think the first thing I can remember is East Midland had a road race league. And on that road race league, I think there was 11 races in East Midlands. So I had 11 road races, which was amazing in East Midlands.
It's like 2014, 2015-ish.
Yeah. Which was great. And then we had Dolly Moors. We didn't have Harvey Hadden, I think, at the time. I think that was still. But I think there was more road racing back then and less crit racing as such. But the crit racing, what we did have was Lichfield, I think Burton had a crit race on, Stafford, like most local towns had their own crit race, which was all really well organised and loads of tourism, and it was really good events.
I recall a couple of times we've been out in the peaks, you've often pointed out to me, oh, there used to be a race on here, there used to be a race on here, and you're like, oh wow, this is actually, looking at it now, you think, no, there's no way there could be, but years ago, less cars on the road, less cost relative to income involved.
Yeah, less potholes, which is good.
I bet, okay. All right, so just talk me through then, what is, people want to get into racing, you know, what is a road race and what is a crit race? What's the differences between them?
So a road race, it says basically it's on open roads. In the UK, you're racing, especially anything down from a Premier or National Series, or what used to be called Premier Calendars, you're racing on open roads. You've got priority on your side of the road, so you've got oncoming cars coming towards you. So you've got to race sensibly as such in the UK.
People like in Australia, America, and other parts of Europe are probably watching this thinking, what on earth? Yeah. You have a rolling roadblock, don't you? We have the the marshals on those bikes who do a great job. They're stopping traffic, but
normally they're stopping traffic on the junctions. Yeah. So they aren't stopping traffic coming towards you on the opposite side of the road. So they'll hopefully be at the junction, making sure you can filter it into your lane successfully, kind of thing. And where crit racing or closed circuit racing is closed circuits, normally a lot smaller, a lot more tight, a lot more furious racing really, because there's less objects to kind of race against as such, like so cars aren't there, you know what I mean? The courses are challenging, but there's less risk in the course themselves are.
Yeah, road races tend to be longer, don't they? Sort of maybe 2, 3, 4 hours in some cases.
Normally road races tend to be at least an hour to 4, where crits can be anything from 30 minutes up to an hour and 5, not normally over that.
Yeah, good. So within that as well then, there's several different levels of racing in the UK, isn't there? Just explain to me the tiers and the, you know, if you've got a 300 watt FTP, what race do you go in? Is that what it's worked out on or not?
So yeah, it's not done by FTP at all. I think people talk about FTP a bit too much nowadays.
This is YouTube.
Yeah. So it's CAT. So it starts with CAT 4 and then goes to Elite. So it's Elite, first, second, third, fourth. Yeah. So fourth CAT, I think, is basically if you're completely new to racing, you buy a BC license and you do CAT 4 road race. And I think you need to get, is it 15 points?
It's 12, I think.
Was it 12?
Yeah,
12 points, which let's say it might be 10 for a win, 8 for a second. So you need to get at least 2 podiums almost to move to a Cat 3. And then Cat 3, your choice of races opens up drastically. Because as a Cat 3, you can do Cat 2 races and Cat 4 races most of the time. So you can do a 3 and 4 and 3, 2. And also, a third Cat, most of the time, can get into an elite crit race.
So I have done one with you, Adam, lasted 27 minutes.
Yeah, so as a third Cat, it's probably the best category if you want to do every kind of racing. And then you move to a second Cat, which is 40 points, which is,
I've not had to look up that statistic.
Yeah. So, to be fair, most second Cats are quite handy. You know what I mean? You can ride a bike, especially nowadays, because everybody's trained, everybody can ride a bike well, or ish. And the kind of the fit people. And then from second Cat to first Cat, that's where there's a big jump. You're getting 40 points for getting a second Cat to then 200 points for a first Cat. And when you're a first Cat, nowadays especially, you're a classy rider. Obviously, it all depends where you're based in the UK. Down London, there's a lot more smaller races than, let's say, Scotland. If you're in Scotland, it's quite hard to travel to get the points to keep your first Cat. So a National B road race, so a big road race, and there's not that many of them nowadays. There's probably only, you imagine, 30 in the year. You get 60 points. So it's quite, and that's from winning it. And then in that 30, there's probably almost every single first Cat and elite doing it. So it's hard to get points.
The same thing, yeah.
Unless you go around to all the small races, but then you're paying a lot of money to enter these races, a lot of money fuel, a lot of money. It just, the price adds up.
So like first Cat and elite, you've got to be very good, but also race a lot as well.
Yes.
So I think commonly we see a lot of second and third Cats around here.
Yeah.
Sometimes some third Cats are as strong as a second Cat, but they just don't do as much racing.
Yeah.
And sometimes second Cats aren't as good, but they just do loads of racing. It's a real mix, isn't it? So I've come from fourth Cat to third Cat, and I've never progressed further than there. But as a third Cat, I can enter whatever race I want. Now races aren't really oversubscribing.
No.
That's the only time I'd lose out because they pick the higher category riders. I entered a crit with you a few months ago.
Yeah,
I didn't need to be a second Cat or a first Cat. My third Cat licence is enabled to do that. But then equally, I can race with my mates who are also third and fourth Cats and so on. So that's the licence category explained. And then different event organisers will host different events, won't they? It's entirely within their discretion whether they have an elite first and second Cat or a second, third and fourth Cat. And I've been a previous event organiser, I've organised one road race. You do want to try and capture a wide audience so you can fill a race up so it breaks even financially. But also you want the racing to be good, so you want as many closer abilities. So it's a really hard balance to strike.
Yeah.
But,
so there's far more third Cat races than any other race. Exactly what you said. It's better for the organiser, keeps the money, good racing, and the people involved tend to be a little bit more relaxed. Where you're elite, you tend to, it's highly more strong people. Because they want to win. They're there to win. Really more.
So things like that, the road races and crit races, especially in our local area and probably in viewers' local areas, do genuinely feed into like the development pathway, don't they? But winding back a little bit, something that was a bit bigger when you were coming through the ranks is reliability rides. Now I've done a couple in the last couple of years around here, and I've thought, oh my god, that was hard, and it was almost probably borderline a road race. And then you've said to me, it wasn't that good. So just talk me through what is a reliability ride, and I know they're different from different organisers, but how have you used them in the past and what they actually like?
So from back in the day, or like, I'm not that old, but back in my day, there was probably 10 reliabilities at the beginning of the season, starting from the end of January, and they used to be to kind of hone your cycling skills. So get used to riding a big bunch again. Make sure your racing bike's up from scratch, just to see where you are compared with your fellow friends in the bunch. And but it tended to be like a little unofficial road race as such. Obviously, you had to abide by the rules of the road and stuff like that. And there was a little bit more etiquette on pulling your turn. So in a road race, people would just say, no, I'm just sitting on. Where in a reliability, you've got to pay for your ticket, really.
Yeah, so I've done the couple of ones I've done locally. There was one, I think it was a cycle division ride that was a lapped course. That the general idea was there was 2 or 3 groups based on ability, a bit self-seeded, and the first lap is a bit easier, then the second lap winds up, and the third lap is pretty much full gas.
Full gas.
And that's a really good workout. You're riding within the rules of the road, and you might be trying to form a breakaway or trying to drop other people, or maybe you're sprinting for a town sign, but it's like halfway between a hard group ride and a race, isn't it?
Yes.
And then we've done rides where perhaps the Mansfield Big Red, it's more of a sportive than it is a reliability.
Yes.
We have gone and had some fun before, and maybe you're forming a group and attacking and whatever, but it's not quite the same. You kindly took 3 of my friends under your wing a few years ago. I didn't make the selection, obviously, and got them in a working breakaway, and they left that ride thinking, wow, I've learned a lot and had a great workout.
Yeah, that was a good day, that Big Red.
Yeah, it was, watching you ride into the distance.
You were just making sure I made the move, weren't you?
I was learning my skills as well.
But it's quite interesting because they road raced a little bit before, but I kind of got them into a bit of a break and made sure it was a bit windy. It was quite a windy day, so I was making sure we rotated the right way and made sure we stayed in basically shelter when we needed to be in shelter. And it was a good day.
It's a learning experience, isn't it, for a lot of people? I know the ones that I've done more recently, exactly the same. And watching how people are riding,
but that's what they're all about.
Dan Barnes came out to one of them a while ago.
Lewis Askey and stuff like that. So the first one's normally the Mercian one, which is Burton locally, and that one's, they call it like it is an early season classic. And you look like you have done like Paris-Roubaix when you got to the end of it, because nobody has mud guards because it's basically a race. So you head to toe in muck. And you basically, there's a good climb over Cannock Chase which splits things up, and me and a chap called Dan Fleeman, who's also National Hill Climb champion twice and rode for Savella Test Team World Tour races. Me and him for quite a few years on the trot, just basically ganged up and we rode off kind of thing.
He dropped me with a bar bag on last year.
There's a couple of nice kickers.
Yeah, there were.
Early doors. Okay, right. I did shout you as I went past.
You did.
Come on,
you're right.
Okay,
enough about that. So reliability, you get well stuck in. They're like an intro to riding fast on the road, but you then start your own journey into crit and road racing. Just talk me through. Where did you start, and then talk me through your career in terms of the British domestic scene.
So I started racing as a junior. So for 2 years, junior, I was racing. Did the junior national series, did some of the junior crits. But when I turned 18, I financially couldn't afford to do it anymore. You know what I mean? Parents couldn't really afford to fund it. I need to get a job and get in the real world. But when I was a bit older, I was 24, I turned on the telly and there was Tour Series on, just started. And I can remember watching my ex-teammates, Andy Tennant, and like ex-friends racing on telly in these evening crit series. I thought, wow, that's fantastic.
My crit bike is Andy Tennant's old bike.
And and that's what got me back into cycling. Went down the bike shop, bought a bike, did hill climbs. And to be fair, I love watching crits, but I was always rubbish at racing them. And I think 2015 I was with Metal Tech, and they basically, a funny sort of story how they signed me. It was through a reliability. I did the Mercian reliability with Dan Fleeman, who rode for Metal Tech. Me and him rode off and won. And then they were going to Mallorca a couple of weeks after, and I was going to Mallorca. So I hooked up with them, and basically me and Dan rode off from Mallorca. So they had 15 rides on the team, and me and Dan were up the road. And I got a phone call about 2 weeks later saying, "Do you want to ride for us?" And I was like, "Yeah," because this is me, a club rider. Yeah, when do you want to come and collect your bike? So I got a bag of kit, got a new bike. I was went from riding for a local shop with them mucking about with my mates to so we're doing tour series, doing this and this. And then the first tour series I did was Isle of Wight. So I got picked up, ferry over to the Isle of Wight, stayed 2 nights at the Isle of Wight, and I was like a rabbit in the headlights. Luckily, it was one of the hilliest tour series that ever was, and I made the lead split, and I think I came last I think there was 20 left in the group, and I came 20th. So I was just
you made the league
yeah,
split.
yeah. And I think there was only me and Dan out the team who made the league split, and Andy was over the moon. It was a fantastic kind of thing. And then I did every other tour series after that. That year, I got dropped instantly almost.
That's how bike racing happens.
Yeah.
Lee Tunnicliffe, won the Otley Grand Prix support race one year, went back the next year, dropped.
Yeah.
He said he was in better shape as well.
Yeah, I just couldn't go around the bends as fast as them lads because I just didn't have didn't practice doing that.
You missed those few years of riding, haven't you, from 18 to 22, 23, like you?
And then I only had so many matches to spend. When it was hilly, it was okay because I could spend the matches where I wanted to, and I was in the front group as such. But yeah, I did Durham that year. I was on telly crashing at the bottom, famous, and yeah, so that was not great. The year after, did the same, bit better. I was okay at the Tour Series, coming like 30th and stuff like that. But then when I signed for Rally, I was riding with Seb Mora, Enrique Sanz. So I put it in perspective. Seb was world points race champion. Enrique Sanz had just signed from us from Movistar. Adria the year before won the National Road Series. And then there was Yuri Havik, who was a 6-day rider and world champion Madison, now he is. And then there was me. So, riding with them actually taught me how to ride a bike properly, really. That year, again, I rode 8 of the 12 Tour Series, and I hated them, if I'm honest, because I was just going around the country, staying in hotels, and getting absolutely battered.
So what level of team was riding then? Were they a Conti team? Were they not? Or just an elite
all
team?
Conti team. So it was like JLT, Madison, One Pro, Pedal Heaven, which turned to Some God in that team. Us, I think Rich and Trek had an elite team there as well. But at that time, I'd say the British crit scene was the best crit rate. I know some of the Americans say some of theirs is better, but I think it was the best crit team, crit racing in the world.
When was that? 12 rounds of the Tour Series in a year? Like that's nuts. Really.
Yeah, and then it went straight to the 12 rounds of the Elite Series, which is the BC kind of series.
Yeah.
So
you're on a team then. What does that mean? What do you get as a rider? Are you able to ride full time? Are you getting a bike and a salary? Is it just kit?
When I signed, the year after that, signed for Rally, and I got a bit of a salary, got bikes, I got everything. So every single bit of kit, every bit of nutrition. I had a team car, so I didn't have to pay for fuel. It was great. And then the year after that, it changed from Rally to Vitis Pro Cycling, and that's when the crit series just clicked, and I went from being nowhere to being in, I think, almost every break. Because if you didn't know what the Tour Series was, it wasn't just done first over the line. It was a team race, so it was on time. So at the end of the night, you used to have an individual winner and then the team winner, and the big money pot was for winning the team prize overall. So basically you wanted to get rides up the road, and let's say if one JLT went up the road, you had to be on them, and then you get riders, so there's me, one JLT, one Madison, so one of each team is kind of got somebody in that move. And that year I got, luckily realised I had some good legs, I had a good Tour of Yorkshire, went into the Tour, and it just clicked. You know what I mean? I had brave pills that day. I mean, I think I came 6th on the first one, and then from that point I thought I can do this.
Yeah, mentally,
Yeah, and then until I think Aberystwyth, and then I crashed badly. So there was about 8 of us away, and we were coming up. I was the last man out of the 8, and we were lapping a bunch of 30. And unfortunately, the last guy in the bunch of 30 didn't think I was there, and basically moved across in front of me, and I crashed, broke my jaw, hurt my wrist, things like that, and that kind of ended that tour series for a bit. But yeah, and then after that, tour series was on a bit of a decline.
Okay, what sort of year was that?
2018, 2019.
So 2018, 2019, there were, through my stats, there were 6 continental teams registered in Britain, and loads of racing.
Yeah.
And we spoke a little bit earlier off camera, but you said that before then there was a rapid growth in the scene and teams and so on. What happened then? Like, I think some people look at the scene now and think, oh, COVID ruined everything. Yeah. But actually, what was happening sort of 2008, 2019?
Yeah, so just before I started, 2016, or started probably 2013, there's a massive growth. So the scene used to be a bit like it is now, where Premier calendars, but they used to have more Premier calendars. They used to have probably 14 Premier calendars, because it used to be easy to put them on because the roads, there was less traffic lights and easy to put road races on. But there was probably 1 or 2 big teams, and then loads of cyclists who kept a full-time job, had families, but kept fit enough so they could race Premier calendars. And then around that time, some big sponsors, Madison, NFTO, came in and pumped loads of money into it and gave riders a chance to ride full-time on salaries. And as soon as you're giving probably 80 riders in the UK a salary, they're working full-time, they're cycling full-time, the quality of the field goes up because they're all training well.
They're all napping in the daytime. Yeah.
And then that brings everybody else on as well, because everybody else needs to up the game to match them. And also, people who are coming like me, I can see if I get better, there's a pathway to me riding my bike full time, which going from working full time, you never thought that was a way forward. It was never thought, I didn't think that's, and because that was such a rapid rise, I think that's sort of what's not helped the British cycling scene at the moment, because it's not come down as rapid, but it's almost plateauing out to the point where it was before this really sharp rise.
Yeah. Well, if you've got a handful of teams with how many riders on? I said earlier, 18 to 20 riders. That's big, isn't it? If all those are on a salary, those sponsor conversations are big money conversations.
Yeah, I heard one team, basically back in the day, they had 20 riders and they all had a manager's meeting. They walked in and asked, basically the manager asked, what salary do you want? And he said yes to everybody.
She was my boss.
Yeah, and some people were on £70,000 a year.
Wow.
And people who walked in and said £20,000, they regretting asking for more.
Yeah, I bet.
But basically they said, if I'm giving you what you want, you need to sacrifice everything to be the best bike rider you can be. Yeah.
Wow. And then, as we've seen, sponsors drop away from teams, and then then what happens to teams? Like we see teams folding. Talk me through that sort of ecosystem change.
Yeah. So I think the way it started was lack of TV coverage, because when I first started, every Prem was on telly.
Was it like mainstream? It
was on ITV4.
Yeah.
But I'd probably be on telly twice a week. So I'll be on telly for the Sunday race, and I'll be on telly for the Tour Series.
God, I missed that.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So, and for years, I had loads when I first started, because I was a wannabe cyclist. I was a cyclist fan who became a cyclist. Yeah. So I was really sad. So I'd recorded every single one race I've been in. So I had like 10 races during the summer I was on. And I had Mickey take out my once. I was away in a break Tour the Reservoir, and I crashed. It looked like I just fell off my bike, but it was really windy. And I crashed, and that was at the start. That was the starting pictures of the race series. So every start of the race, there was me falling off my bike.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Good coverage for sponsors.
Yeah. But it was on telly. It might have been on 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night, but you could watch it, and then that's stopped. As soon as that stopped, it's hard to sell this dream to sponsors. And as soon as a couple of sponsors drop off, and then also team management change, and I do find now it's almost a race to the bottom. So instead of, let's say, you going to a company and saying, I want product and I want 10 grand, basically they say the companies, the products are saying, or companies are saying, we'll give you half the product and no money. If you see what I mean. But because this team's off, let's say one team says you got to give us 10 grand and loads of kit, and another team says I just want half that kit, no money. You're going to go with that kit.
All they're looking for is coverage within a team, and perhaps not aligned to one specific team.
And it only takes a few teams to do that, and then suddenly the money drops off. And racing's so expensive: fuel costs, race entries, nutrition. It's expensive.
Yeah. So I've only been a fan of the sport for years, and the domestic scene. I'll go and watch Lincoln Grand Prix and go and watch these races. Yeah. But when you see teams fold, it seems like they're on such a knife edge, because you'll see, like when Canyon DHB with SunGuard folded, it was like a real last minute, we can't do it. Yeah. And you think, well, you must be relying on every single penny to make these things happen, and because you know that with a series of with a calendar and travel, you commit to so much. If one team, one sponsor drops out, that's it. It's all over. It seems strange to operate on such a knife edge. But
so I can imagine the fuel costs are probably £15,000 a year. So if one sponsor pulls out, that £15,000, the team can't run because they can't afford to put fuel in the car. It doesn't matter that a company is sponsoring you to have a car. Somebody's got to put fuel in that car, kind of thing. So it's very much on a knife edge. And all these races which you're racing, you've got to pay race entries. None of it's not like in Belgium where they pay you to race. In the UK, you still got to pay British Cycling. I think in Premier Calendar now's £80. So 8 riders.
Yeah, it adds up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, during the the demise, but certainly a decline of the men's scene, I think we have seen a real growth in the women's scene, haven't we? So how has, you've been at these races where you've perhaps been at the past where there is only a men's race on in the day, whereas now there's a men's and a women's race, or an open and a women's race. And how has that changed the feeling in the scene? How has that changed the scene itself? Like, you go to Premier Calendar now and there's always an open and a women's race. And there's 6 quantity teams British registered this year for women's.
I think for sponsors, it's so much easier for them to sponsor a women's team. If I'm honest, because they haven't been used to having as much, they're willing to accept not as much. So sponsoring a men's team, they used to have to give money and kit, where women's team were happy just to accept kit, like I said earlier.
I think the women's team's not as big either, are they?
Yeah, there's probably less riders, or less of a setup, and like anything, it's what's popular at the time. And it's what's going to give the sponsors the most coverage as such. I do think there's still less riders in the women's team, in the women's scene. So if you can, let's say, sponsor 10% of the women's scene when you're only sponsoring 3% of the men's team, you're getting more coverage because you're seeing more.
Like that shot of the breakaway in a Premier Calendar race. If you look at last year, well, you probably was watching St. Piran, right? Whereas in the women's field, you got a spread of the teams.
Exactly.
And you got,
to be fair, I do, because the women's race is always before or after the men's. If one is, we're kind of almost segregated. We don't really, you've focused on your own race. Hill climbing, I see a little bit more, and the women's scene has come massively on hill climbing wise, and the prize money is always equalled out. But yeah, I think it's great for the British scene, but I think we can't just rest on our laurels. We still need to push on, and really we want it bigger, really.
Well, let's talk about bigger events then. So this year, 2024, we've managed to have a women's tour of Britain, which was, I think it was 4 stages, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then
or 3 or 4,
and then a men's tour, which was 6 stages.
Yes. I think I got cut down. Was it 6?
I think it was 6 this year. But a few years ago, you just mentioned some races earlier. You've got the Tour de Yorkshire, the Tour of the Res. The Sickle Classic is a UCI. Is it 2.1 or 2.2?
2.1.
But talk me through the big races in the UK and how they affect the scene.
So, we used to have big races. So, first big race of the year was always actually Cycle Classic, which is a bit of the Belgian style race, we class it as. So there's some gravel tracks. It's a bit of carnage. Good to watch. Again, on telly it used to be great to watch because you just like see people crashing, like you see the dust flying up everywhere, team cars puncturing, like there's always good atmosphere. So that's the first big British race.
And that's been really good, I think, for the juniors. So there's a women's, a men's, and a juniors.
Yeah.
The Junior Cycle Classic, if you look at the top three for the last about 10 years,
they've all...
the number of names you recognise then in the Pro Tour, there's so many, isn't there?
Yeah. And what I do love about that, every race is on a different day.
So they get their own day.
Get their own day.
Completely different conditions and all sorts.
Different conditions, but it means, let's say, people go out to watch that race where they don't turn up a bit later because the men's race, or so it kind of gets its own, which I think it needs to be. But I'm going back again. British scene always used to start off in France. So as a quantity rider, we'd always go over to France, do smaller French races like 1.1s, 1.2s. Then we used to do like Tour of Normandy. Then Loire-Cher, which is a 7-day stage race called mini Tour de France, really big race. Come back from that, go straight into a cycle classic, and then the week after that is Victoria Yorkshire. So you used to have probably 20 races where you're building for Victoria Yorkshire, and that's like a showcase where big television. It was put on by the same people who run the Tour de France. So the atmosphere was great, massive amount of people, helicopters in the sky, great stuff. And then the week after that, it went straight to Tour Series. And then you had 10 weeks of going around the country, going all around every city from Motherwell, Manchester, a couple in London, Bath. And then after that, you had a little bit of a break just before national championships, and then the British Elite Series. So all out September.
It's like a packed calendar, isn't it?
So I think I raced 56 times.
Wow.
In one, I mean, which is great. And I like racing that way.
It's the easiest way to train, isn't it, right? Just get some racing in your legs and you get that intensity and so on. I don't want to skip past the Tour de Yorkshire 2019. What stage was it you got in the break?
So stage 3. So from, I think it was Richmond to Scarborough. Went up Sutton Bank, amazing day, like fantastic. It was probably best day on the bike for me. Crowds were absolutely unbelievable, on telly all day. Sun was out. It was a Saturday, so it was the busy day. Yeah, and got
Who were you in the break with?
So I was in break with a Cofidis rider. I forgot his name. I think he might have got done for drugs 2 years later. I know he won the stage that year. He won the stage of Tour de France,
right? And
he was flying like unbelievable.
Actually,
and then there was Johnny McAvoy. He used to ride from Madison. Right. Fantastic rider, mega crit rider. I think he works for Madison. He's the Madison ambassador now. Okay. And then who else? There was a Dutch rider and somebody else. I can't really remember. I remember Johnny because Johnny basically came up to me and said, "This will be the best day ever on the bike." It was, and he it was great. Unfortunately, it went up Sutton Bank and then it went up another big climb. And Greg Van Orfmot wanted to win the sprint.
Yeah, so flat finish,
yeah, flat finish. But to do that, he had to drop cav. So BMC rode as hard as they can up the climb, dropped cav, which unfortunately brought us back early. So I can always remember. So I did a good ride the day before as well. I think I was in the lead group going up the Cow and Calf climb, which was great, with Chris Froome and all them. It's kind of a bit surreal.
Yeah,
but because I was going well, obviously I had a random drugs test every day.
Yeah. Who's this guy?
Yeah. So I had a blood test every day that Tour of Yorkshire. And I can remember riding back into the finish because I kind of sat up after I got caught, or about 10k to go in, and the team car, Chez radioed in saying, you've just been picked again for random blood tests. And I was like, thank you. But that was quite cool. So rode in, and Anti-Doping's got their own bus. And so I went in this bus, and obviously Greg Marford won, so I was there. Yeah. My mate Greg was there, and then like all these people, like famous people. And then the bus decided to almost topple over. One of the legs fell over. So yeah, imagine Greg trying to have a wee in front of this guy with this bus tippling over. Yeah, it was quite...
All right. So the rest of the year, then you'd have a Tour of Britain right at the end of the year, which seems to be the feeling I get is that if you're on an elite team or a Conti team in the UK, that is the aim. It's to get picked for the team. It's to get to ride it.
Yep.
I think that's the case then.
Yes, that's the case. For elite team or a Conti team, that's the only reason now, especially to ride for them. They probably don't give you as much support as years ago. So they don't give you the race days which you had before. So now, it's really just, that was a fight. But back in the day, there used to be a points criteria to get into the Tour of Britain because there's more Conti teams, which was great. I think there was 8 Conti teams at one point, and only 5 could do the Tour of Britain. You had to be in the top 5 points-wise to get into it. And it wasn't BC points, it was Sweet Spot's own point system.
Doesn't sound at all fraudulent.
Which sometimes used to change during the year, which I'm not bitter on at all, because one year we didn't get in because it changed halfway through the year. But yeah.
So I think on this year we saw like Project Echelon coming over from America to race the Tour of Britain, Luckily we've only got 2 British Conti teams this year anyway, men's, but nuts.
It's a shame really, because the only British stage race in the UK, and there's only 12 British rides in it.
Yeah. How important is like the events like Tour de Yorkshire, Tour of Britain to the lower tiers of racing? Like, is it key? Because some people say, it costs so much money to put on, and they close all the roads. Just don't bother. Put the money somewhere else.
If I'm honest with you, for domestic scene, not a jot. 6 riders it matters. Them 6 continental riders, because so there's St. Bran, and then there's
Trinity.
Trinity really don't race in the UK anyway, so they kind of a different team really. That's like a under 23 mega team races abroad. It's really only for them 6 riders who are on St. Bran. It doesn't really matter. That's why I really think there needs to be a domestic Tour of Britain, like the RAS, which Tour of Ireland. Because
riders from Britain go across to.
Because that would basically something what the domestic riders can aim towards and focus on, something like a massive goal of the year, and have it as so they can compete in it, if you see what I mean. And they would do if it was there. I'm sure they'll raise a game to be up there.
South Normanton wildcards.
Yeah, definitely. See you on the front driving it.
Yeah, exactly. What about local racing? Obviously, you've seen that change from years and years. You did it as part of your pathway, and even this year you're at Darley Moor, you're at Harvey Haddon. Even had a race named after you at Harvey Haddon.
I did, one time, didn't you?
How important is that, and what do you think that sort of scene is at compared to years ago?
I think it's good, but I think almost it is good. It is great. But I think almost that's not taken away, but that's, people see that as an alternative to the road race scene, which kind of died off. So during the week, like summer now, I think there's Harvey Haddon, which is 8 events. But again, that was put on by a couple of people, Tom and a few others, who use their valuable time to put these races on. And they're great races, but they're meant to be fun races.
Well, like yours normally finishes in the dark.
And I've got to go work the next day. So when I'm finishing a race at 9 o'clock at night, I'm not leaving till 10. I'm not getting home till 11. It's hard to do.
Within range rules, we've got Harvey Haddon, the Wednesday night series. I think it's only going to be 6 nights next year, or roughly that. It relies on volunteers from all different areas. Darley Moor, brilliant closed circuit. It is a bit boring in that there's no terrain. However, it's
racing makes it
exactly. But I think it really comes down to the event organisers. There are a couple of event organisers that host races on that circuit. One of which really embrace social media, and they've got content. You get your picture straight after and all of that. Another one doesn't, but you still sort of see the same numbers turn up to each sort of race. But And we got Lichfield, which you mentioned earlier, which there aren't really many races there. There's a couple in a year.
Yeah.
But I think we're quite lucky in the UK that we've got a few different closed circuits within reach.
Yeah.
I don't think that's representative of other areas in the UK, because I get comments on my video saying, oh, where's this? What's this racing? I've never seen anything anywhere near me, or you're lucky to have that on your doorstep.
There's like Milton Keynes Bowl, which is also really good racing. They put loads on, and Tret's really good racing down there as well. I really like getting over there, but like, again, it's 2 hours, and if you imagine nowadays, 2 hours there, 2 hours back, fuel
to potentially get dropped. And
you know what I mean. And I have to make it, for me, financially viable. Yeah. So if I turn up, really, I'm upset if I don't get on the podium, to get a little bit of money back to pay a bit of fuel.
You just can't keep doing it every week.
Yeah, you've got to kind of justify it to yourself. When you first starting, you're learning the skill. You kind of, but obviously.
I love the closed circuit events we have. Like, we look at, used to think about Tour of Britain as the goal for Conti riders. Well, for me as a third cat road rider, the goal is to race an E123 with you, right? So I've got the fourth cat only, and then you've got a 3 and 4, then you've got a 2, 3, 4, and I've been slowly trying to work my way through that. And there's a lot of people in that situation, and I feel like we have this real local pathway where you might not want to actually progress to elite, but you're facing the same people every 2 or 3 weeks, and you're sort of checking where you're at and stuff. And I really like that, and I think we've got a good scene in that nobody really takes it too seriously. So
I think we're super lucky in this Derbyshire area. We've got some great clubs like Southampton, your club, some great people, VB, RB Mercury, some great rides.
Matlock as well.
Matlock.
Trials and credits.
So there's lots of people who are nicely competitive.
Yeah.
Like there's local chain gangs. You do a fast Friday. So I think that all kind of, and also I do love how there's a bit of needle now and then. So one club is a bit competitive against another club, and people want to beat each other, and I love it. And that's what I like about the reliabilities as well, because that's when the needle gets set for the racing later on. Like somebody gets dropped in a reliability, so in the next road races they want to beat them. So it's a really good local scene, and I think Zwift has hurt it a little bit during winter, because there used to be 3 or 4 evening rides a week, and now there's probably 2. And if it's raining like tonight, there's probably not that many.
Brilliant. Okay, well, Adam, thank you very much for giving us a good overview about your history and the British domestic scene. We're all hopeful that the scene's going to continue to get better, but
fingers crossed. I think it'll plateau for a bit. Personally, I think it'll plateau. I think there needs some drastic changes, probably in the category system and racing system, because I think almost all races need to be more open. Because if it keeps on like this, there's not going to be enough races in each category to keep it alive. I think all the races need to be almost merged. So instead of having 5, I know you might disagree completely, instead of having 5 categories, it might start being like a mountain bike, instead of having sport, or I think it's fun, sport,
expert pro.
And hopefully,
is that like self-seeded, like you can say what you are?
I think until the last 2, I think, but then let's say in the win, it just gives these race organisers making sure they're guaranteed full races.
I feel like our local crit scene operates like that anyway. Specifically for me, I'm a third cat. I can enter a 3rd and 4th cat. I can enter a 2, 3, 4 or an E123. So I can always do that anyway.
See, where I'm, from my point of view, as a first cat or elite, there's some weekends where I've got to drive 100 miles for a race. There's no racing. And I come at Darley Moor, there's 2 races on. So there's racing Saturday, racing Sunday. And I couldn't race any.
From my point of view, if you would say, right, there's Adam Kenway and 10 of his elite road rider mates in this race today, I think, God, it's going to be hard today. Or do you know what? They might just ride off from us, and I'm still going to have the same race I would have had anyway with those people who are similar ability to me. So I wouldn't be like, upset that I'm not going to win. Maybe some people might be, because they think, well, that's not fair. But I think a wider.
And then it would mean there's more races as such for everybody. But then there's probably only 200 elites and first class. So
there's an event organiser to us at Darley Moor that always have been testing this year. They do you get a really cheap second race on the same day.
Yeah, I love that.
That's the reason why I did the E123 with you, because, well, it was only a tenner. I'm there anyway. I've already had my race. If it doesn't go to plan, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that's actually, there's a few people in my situation in that same race as well. I think that could work.
Yeah, I think it's great.
It's a bit harder for the commissaires, keeping track of who's where when you're getting lapped groups and so on. But
I have to take my hat off to the commissaires and the volunteers, because it doesn't happen without volunteers. And we need more volunteers. But even me, I think I need to volunteer, but then I have to take my son to football when I'm not racing or riding my bike. I'm taking my son to football matches and things like that. So
I found the commissaires brilliant this year. We used to have to go through a process to get cameras approved to use on bikes, and they were great through that. But then now it's a bit more of a free for all. They're telling me, enjoy that video of you getting dropped last week, Daniel, and all that sort of stuff. And they like encouraging it and so on. And it was safe to breathe at the beginning and whatever else. So, good stuff. All right, well, Adam, thank you very much for giving us your time.
No, thank you.
Sorry to hear you hanging your wheels up this season.
Yeah.
We might, if you've got some time, get you back on at some point in the future for a Adam Kenway full-on interview. But it's been good to hear from somebody who actually knows what they're talking about in the domestic scene, because I tend to just race around circles at Darley Moor. So, right, thanks very much.
Cheers. See you soon.